Let's review some floor plan dimensions and notes examples. We need dimensions, and we provide dimensions used for construction, and these are found in all of the architectural drawings that we produce. And they come in the form of numerical values, symbols, notes, a lot of the lines and extension lines, and all drawings must have dimensions to be valid and to be used for construction. Line dimensioning is the most common dimension system. Dimensions are placed in a line with the dimension lines, and they're read from the bottom or the right side of the sheet, and extension lines show the extent of the dimension, start with a small space from the feature being dimensioned, and extend past dimension line. Here we see some examples of that. We can take there is the space in between the object and the dimension that happens, and then after that they're evenly spaced. Here are the various types of end marks you can have. This is our extension line here, and then different qualities that you can make to your extension line. And those are more aesthetic, but this is usually the one that is used most commonly for construction and blueprints is the hatch mark. The space depends upon the room, 3/8 inch usually, and then you can see how they're stacked. There are different methods of placing exterior dimensions when you're laying out the stud wall, and sometimes in different firms things can be a little bit different and more stylistically, but I will talk mostly about dimensioning to the face of stud, which is the most common method. There's also center line and face of finish, but these two involve doing math in the field before you set your chalk down. The stud frame is the vertical construction member of a wood or steel frame wall, and the studs placed between the bottom sole and the top plates. Aligned dimensioning is the most common dimensioning system, and that's the one, let me just go back up here, where everything here is aligned, reading one after another in about 3/8 of an inch increments and stepping up, but you can see how they're all facing the same direction. Dimensions are placed in a line with the dimension lines. They're read from the bottom or the right side of the sheet. Extension lines show the extent of the dimension and start with a small space from feature being dimensioned and extend past the dimension line. Here we see the example of our dimension string that's hung off the face of the stud, and you can see how they're all in alignment, each of these, and they go from face of stud to face of stud. That's the overall dimension, and then it breaks down into the interior partition center line. So this one they're going to do interior, but then also you'll notice something new is for door openings and window openings, they put the dimension line to the exact center of that opening, and that is because it's considered a rough opening, and so this could most likely as a masonry wall because of its thickness. And so once it's in place, it's harder to change. But the thing that is consistent would be the center line. So if this is a rough opening, you'll place your window within here when you're in the field, and then you'll be good to go knowing where to place it. Here is another example doing the same thing with the door center line, face of stud, and that's reflected over here in our elevation, which we'll get to in a little bit, about where we're going to keep it with the face of the stud here. But just know that that also does not negate or say that there isn't a sheathing or a siding that's happening here. So those are added in afterwards, but with our convenient way of doing face of stud, we keep the math simple, but you could get more complex as you get more skilled. You can do face of sheathing, including all that, and then take your measurement off that. Again, that's a little bit more math involved. We're trying to keep it simple for now. When it comes to placing of interior dimensions, It's all about the size and the location of the thing that you are measuring. Here we can see that this dimensioning has been done to the face of stud, and at least if one is done right, we can assume that it's going to even up and catch each one. Here's a nice string that's done, and because the objective is to locate these walls and their fixtures, it's important that the size and location take place. Some firms and personal drafters will take the time to also dimension the width of the wall, which is helpful, but can also clutter up a drawing pretty fast. And you can see that there are some standalone parts of the dimension, like this one here is this door opening, and we have the locations of some of your fixtures in here will be dictated by ADA or best practices. There are also standard feature dimensions, different things that are broken out. We have, for example, if we want to say what the refrigerator should be within this distance tolerance, we'll add our distance to it. We'll label things base cabinet so there's no confusion if it's going to be used as a pantry. Here's a one that's typical is this door opening. You need to have this 3-inch minimum, and those of in my Revit class tend to sometimes let the Revit just place it up against the wall, but you need a little space for that door to stay in an open position. Sometimes you might need a little bit more, but 3 inches is the minimum. There's also spot elevations and different kinds of details. They're showing the 36 minimum shower, and this is our shower symbol. The leader line curved freehand or with irregular curve or straight at the center at the beginning of the end note terminate with an arrowhead, so you can make these notes that go to things. Omitting dimensions established by the foundation. The foundation system is placed on the ground and used to support the building, and certain features on a floor plan are established on the foundation plan. This is a little bit more than we're going into in our space planning course, but the foundation laying below has a direct opening, and one thing you'd wonder here, this is the opening for the garage door. Why isn't that to center line? It's because this has to be a very certain size for the masons who are working on this foundation plan. They need to know exactly what that is. So it's a little bit more than a rough opening. And then that transmits up through the floor plan. And then here it's clearly labeled on the first floor, and we can have the distance to that. So the masonry is coming above to our 4 feet height, so it's being shown on the plan. You can, they say never to dimension twice on a floor plan, but in construction, unlike mechanical drafting, sometimes it's a good idea to help people out by adding a duplicate dimension in another location to illustrate your point. Dimensioning arc and circular floor plan features. Features originating from the foundation do not require floor plan dimensions. Okay, and sometimes you have to reference something like on an arc. And let's see a picture. You might have some kind of porch or outside gazebo that you need to take from a center line so that you can strike the arc and locate the center line and how far over it resides. And so you can see that they've done sort of an aligned dimensioning to locate these columns, or sometimes you might have. Now, let's talk a little bit about floor plan notes and specifications. Specific notes relate to specific features, and most common are window and door schedules, room names and appliance labels, tub, shower, and spa labels, fireplace or solid burning appliance labels, the stair and closet labels, and access firewells, floor lines, and notes. Some are local, so they'll go on the page that you're working on. So you might be working on the interior doors, and you'll need the note right there. There are general notes that go with all of your construction, and they These notes apply to features in the entire drawing, commonly lettered in the field of the drawing, usually contained in a box or open, but more or less in this format. And they cover a lot of the things that apply to most of the appliances and kind of are a little bit more insurance and protection for the builder. There are standard construction modules, and the standard modules are 12, 16, and 24. And material conservation and construction labor simplification is important to consider. So when you start making things, you'll find that these modules help you to think of your design, but also minimize waste while you're doing it. And you can have many different kinds of modules make up a component, so you're a little bit more versatile. Well, this should help you get a good start on the basics of interior dimensioning that we can use for our project. And you keep growing your skills and your technique as you go along.